I made several grievous errors. One was that these lectures, we've been using a call list, and this was the 1 week I didn't call the people who were on the list. And people who I know would just normally come have gotten addicted to the call. A lot of people call and say, hey, you didn't call me. I guess it must not be no lecture. And for those that I could reach, I could tell. But the grievous error was I'm addicted to people to calling. And so I made an error. I should have called them. Even though they should know if I'm here on Tuesday, it will be here. Also, the Million Man March has some early arrivers, some of which some brothers even stopped by before the program tonight to say they were on their way up to New York, and I know others who were catching buses at 3 a.m. this morning, some at midnight, some are leaving early in the morning and choose to be prepared. And we wish all of those who are on their way to the headquarters of the ADL, where the coming out will be held. Again, the title is Atonement, World Atonement. We've asked for forgiveness for the few sins we've committed. It's just the other side don't play that. So while we're atoning, the other side continuously perpetrates. So we still have a misappropriate strategy for an oncoming enemy. So I'm intrigued by, all of you will, I'm sure, be intrigued by what tomorrow looks like. I know that they chose this year to use closed-circuit satellite television, which on the surface admits to many that they won't be coming to New York, that they have the option. I don't remember last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Juan, that there was an option to watch the program on closed circuit at your various city, or the satellite as they call it, or CNN as we may know it, that was readily available, that last year you had to come. That there was no home vision outside of watching it on CNN or something comparable.
Well, there was something at the Stadium Armory or different.
Last year?
Nah, this year. You could go in and watch it at the
Right,
Stadium
you can watch it
Armory.
on satellite,
Different
closed circuit, or whatever they want to call it. But my point was that last year I do not believe that that was an option. And
Not at all.
my purpose in mentioning that is that there was no need last year, and that the proof was to be here. This year there's almost a mild confession that many are not going to make it to New York, so other options were made available, including closed-circuit satellite television. So that is on, and we wish everybody well. I know there are programs going on the night of. There are several programs going on. I know that the United African Movement, who traditionally in New York has traditions about who has meetings on what nights. Alamde Braff and his group have Fridays. The United African Movement and their group use Wednesdays. Al Sharpton and his group use Saturday morning. And nobody puts programs on the nights that the traditionalists have their programs. Eric Muhammad and the Black Holocaust Council has his program on Thursdays. And so Wednesday is the regular program of the United African Movement tomorrow night in New York. And it's going to be a coming out, a celebration of sorts. There will be many people there from all sorts of places. As well as, I know Brother Eric will be having this program on Thursday for any of you who are still up there. I'll be speaking up there Thursday night at the Black Holocaust Council's regular Thursday evening meeting. And I don't know how many of you all saw or got a good take on the impact of the, I don't know what is appropriate, Hispanic, Latino, but they had their event Saturday. Didn't I see you there when you did the movie? At the Hispanic Million Man March?
That must be a mistake.
Okay. It was just throwing you through the door Saturday.
That was Friday.
Right, we have a little report from Brother Demoli. I wanted to show you all how you respond to interactions. The brother was accosted by the police the other day down the street here at the, what's the name of that rep?
Up against the wall.
Up against the wall. At the press hall, up against the wall. He was thrown up against the wall. And he was down here putting the flyers out. We put out a few flyers just to try to make a little Columbus statement. We saw the door was broken just like he said it was. It was broken off. He went to the police department to complain, and they told him to come back at 11 o'clock p.m. at night. That he could confront the officer.
Jeffrey Gilbert.
But that is not how citizen complaint process works. And you cannot intimidate someone by suggesting they come there down to midnight, to come into a police district out of their neighborhood to approach an officer while he, in fact, at shift time, they have what they call watch call, where they either line up or the supervisor checks their shoes, pants, shirts, pass them their shift instructions, or watch instructions. The watch officer informs them of certain areas of the beat which have heightened activity or potential activity, or will announce meeting of gangs or other things in the particular beats during that watch time, where all of the officers are, would seem only an intimidating act to ask someone to come and file a complaint at that time when the official complaint apparatus is closed. And when the brother went to the desk to complain to the police, he waited 10-15 minutes even just to get their attention. Subsequent to them even giving him his attention, his parents were there. And in respect to them, they looked up and began to ask them what did they want. And they said, we're here to try to get my son squared away. And okay. So they began to want to take even a mild interest. At that point, they began to ill-advise him as to what were his remedies for a police complaint. And I asked him, I'm not bad at doing those type of things, and I would suggest to any of you who have bad products or believe that a contract was unfairly honored or unhonored, dishonored, or have any other, and I don't use the word litigatable, because stuff I do is not about litigation. But if you have any a grievance that you would like to see advanced, when I get this Demoli here paid, so I get all the money. When he comes to the lecture, I'm gonna get the full price, because I'm gonna get him paid so I can get the money from him. So if any of you have similar to those complaints, please know that I could assist you. And I asked brother to do some mechanical things that are important. One is to write down exactly everything that he could remember that had happened. And two is you put those in some sort of chronological series of events. At that time, I would discuss, as I will with him, some of the things that are in his notes, and we'll expand those notes. In fact, why don't you come on up here, Demoli? I see you brought all of your stuff. And I don't know why I've been carrying this fella with me everywhere I've been going. Somehow I think he's a fierce fighter here. Somewhere deep inside is black. I know it's fierce African fighter. And I asked him to write down some of those things that were important. I'm not going to ask you to read it all. No, because I tried to, as he related to me on Saturday, relate to you some of what makes his complaint important, because I'm sure that many of the Africans suffer from the same process, and I was hoping that brother would be here that would help us, and I see he's here that can help us in responding to this type of thing, the appropriate procedures that are necessary. And is there anything that you wanted to relay to the audience about what happened to you?
Yeah.
Go ahead, quickly.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's start off. The
Okay.
officer, I was told, that has a previous record of liking to get rowdy with younger black guys or even girls. Because from what I heard, he threw a girl up in the concrete at a club. He's had an attitude of that because he's kind of about 6'3", heavily built. I was having a conversation with a young lady in the store because normally the people, I'm very friendly with the people and up against the wall. They let me use their phone after they took out the phone there, and they were hearing my music. We have music. Her boyfriend has a studio. I'm letting them hear my new music. Okay, what we doing with it? Then out of the blue, she says, "Okay, yeah, your cop friend, I saw him earlier on today. So was he in uniform?" Cop friend referring to the other cop who was harassing me. You know, while I'm out there in Georgia doing a little protest material, selling my protest material, music, and so forth, you know, pushing out my word, and which is really anti-establishment. Anyway, to move the story on. So I'm saying, yeah, it was in Squawk. I said, oh, yeah. I said, I try to stay out of his way, you know. I said, I figured he had something better to do than to harass me, just trying to get my music on and advance myself, doing something positive. I said, there's a lot of other things he could be focusing on. All of a sudden, the cop came from behind the counter. We have pictures of these, too, of proximities. Came about 3 yards from the counter and came up to me and was like, yo, talking about me? I was like, you? I said, I don't know who you are. I said, we never met. I said, who are you? He said, get out of here. He said, get out? I said, yo, man, what's going on? So I was putting my stuff in my bag. He said, oh, you need help. He came around. Next action, I think it was his right hand. He put his right hand on my throat, was shoving me back. As he was shoving me back, my radio dropped down on the floor. And I mean, I guess his hand swiped and knocked my radio on the floor. I was like, yo, what's going on? Yo, chill, what's this? What's this? Pushed me, said, yo. He said, yeah, do something so I can fuck you up. Do something so I can fuck you up. He kept on pushing me back. At this time, I was losing my balance. I tried to grab on the banister out there to get my balance so I could slow him down. So don't grab on shit, man. You do something, fuck you up. Threw me up. I was up against he kept on throwing me up the stairs. And then he slammed me right across the door. My head hit back, my elbow hit against the door, and the door, from the force of that, the door's hinges broke off. And I was bang, and I was out in the street, and I was like, damn, what's going on? He brushed himself off, smirked, and went in the store. The store manager was outside having a conversation with somebody. I was like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, the cop didn't say nothing. He went inside. I told the store manager, I said, I don't know what's going on with your man here, man. I said, he just assaulted me for no reason. I said, yo, man, what's up with him? He's working with y'all? I said, yeah, he's working, but nobody wanted to supply me any information. Because while the whole thing was going on, I was trying to get his name, but his name tag was ripped off. I was trying to get his badge number. His badge number was defaced. It only had 3 numbers on it. So the cop came back. He came back and, you know, trying to intimidation move. They were like, yo, don't go back in there. You can't come up in there. Yeah, you just have bad luck with these cops. Bad luck? I was like, man, he's assaulting me. There ain't no bad luck. But then I asked.
So you go to the police station?
I went to the police station. And when I went to the police station, I was there with my mom.
Which police station is it?
3rd Precinct.
Which is where?
Which is at 1620 B Street, Meridian. And it's in a back alleyway. It's not really, it's very obscure. I'm saying it's in a back alleyway out there. And I was waiting out there.
That's where they want you to come back at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, 11 o'clock at night. In the back alleyway.
11 o'clock p.m. they want me to go in the back.
And I mean, it was early in the morning. It was like around 10 o'clock in the morning, and on Saturday, and there was about 5 cops in there. It was 5 cops. They saw me standing there at the counter looking at them. The one cop was writing out a report with a white guy who said his tags was lost or something. Cops were walking by. White cop went by, looked at his paperwork, went on. Another cop was at the computer, went on. Then this went on for about 10-15 minutes. Then my mom walked in and she was carrying my son. Like, oh, you know, trying to smile and be funny with my son. And they're like, oh, you need help? Are you being helped, ma'am? It's like, oh no, I'm here to see with my son. I'm here to see my son. Then she said, oh. Then the cop asked, oh, are you being helped? Am I being helped? I've been here 15 minutes. We even have eye contact. Am I being helped? Then I said, yes. I was assaulted by an officer. I said, a big cocked guy. I said, he didn't give me his name. He said his badge is 2857. All I could get is 285. Said, oh, Mike Johnson. They looked in the computer. Oh, yeah, Mike Johnson. I said, yeah, tall guy, big build. Said, yeah. I said, yeah, I'd like to file a complaint against. He assaulted me and up against the wall yesterday. It's like, oh, yeah, he don't work till midnight, so, you know, you got to come back at 11 o'clock when there's officers, superior officers there. I said, you telling me there's no form I could fill out, there's no information I could take with me? I said, it's an inconvenience to come, you have to come back at 11. My mom was like, I mean, come on. My mom started getting irate with him. They're like, man, we can't do anything for you. That was that. And I called the watch commander that day, and he said, yes, we'll send them. They will send the forms to me this coming week. But I told them
Well,
that
you call the watch commander.
I called the watch commander to tell him what went on and tell him that I'm taking this to a higher authority because none of his officers tried to assist me. They obstructed justice. I said that none of them even let me know that I could even contact him about this issue. That I had to go to an external source to find out that I could even talk to him about what it went on.
This is after we talked?
After we talked.
And so then the watch commander, what did he say? He said
he apologized. He said he apologized, and that's why I'm accommodating you by sending these forms. And I didn't respond to that. That was that. No, that was that. I ain't even having no response for that kind of
You get
comment.
him yet? You get him
Nope.
yet? Well, it's
Got
probably a
before-
holiday.
yeah, it's the
Everybody was
holiday.
off for the Columbus holiday, so I know mails were down. But the reason I say this is that you can't lose a lot of little battles on the way to win a big one.
Right.
If you can't neutralize the Praetorian Guard, then you ain't gonna conquer the king because there are greater armies and deeper operations that we have to resolve before we can get the satisfaction that we're looking for. Yes.
Just another interjection though. My partner who also sells tapes there with me had gone to
Who I
ask.
saw yesterday.
Yeah, you saw yesterday. Went and asked him. He said, "Yo, I mean, what went on there?" He was like, "Yeah, your man called me a bitch, man. Ain't nobody getting away with calling me a bitch. Yo, I can't have that." I mean, I was pretty. My man was like, "Oh, come on, man. I know them old. He ain't gonna act like, oh man, why? He just came up and just called you a bitch, huh?" It's like, "Yeah, man. He just came up, called me a bitch. I ain't having that." And that was funny. Then he told another guy a contradictory story. He said, yeah, he was on the phone. He was like, yeah, this bitch ass cop's in front of me, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, he's holding his whole excuses. I called him a bitch. One is that I called him a bitch directly. Another one is that I called him a bitch while I'm talking to somebody on the phone. That's how his whole, that was his whole grounds. And I wanted to state that because that's not the first time it's happened, and it seems to be a trend with these black cops to mess with younger guys and account younger guys for no reason, just because they have a badge.
And for the record, you haven't been feeling well since then, have you?
No, I'm not. I've been having a migraine headache, and my elbow's been severely sore. Slam me, you see this amount of force he slammed me into the door with, you'd understand that. We took pictures of that because they got a repairman to come and fix it today, and I noticed the manager wasn't in. So they were all talking in the store about what went on. I was like, yeah, you saw that, right? Because when I went there yesterday, nobody wanted to talk. Everybody was like, I ain't in it. So I said, yeah, you saw that, right? Yeah, I saw that. It was out of control. The other girl was like, I don't know. The girl I was conversing with was like, I don't know what went on. I mean, I don't know what went on with y'all before, but I saw that, and it was wild. So, you know, I'm going to try to hold them to being witnesses. But from what I suspect, people are going to be very mum. Mum is the issue. They all seem to want to protect this bastard who just seems to just be a vigilant of no purpose.
I have a question, Steve.
And the moral to the story is that we reserve the right to beat Demoli to death, but them, no. We will fight for the right to reserve this beating for ourselves. All right, take care of that arm. We
yeah.
can go to therapy and shit.
I'll be in therapy.
Another thing I need to say publicly because I need to do this was that I had told Chris he couldn't videotape tonight, and I had other brothers videotaping. I had asked to interview Brother Donald and was going to grant him that privilege, but I owe Chris an apology because I had told him that he couldn't bring it, and I got Buddy here and I got Brother Donald here, so I owe him that, and I need to say that because that was another thing that I could have done a little better. Some of you all weren't here last week, and we had a discussion going on. How many of you all were here last week? Okay, we were, I took last week, I turned the cameras off so that I could share some information on the boule that I didn't want to put into a tape or in the record. It is on last week's tape, and I am, when I put a few more of those type of things on the tape, going to make tonight's tape available as well. I also have the video with the footage from the recent boule convention here in '96, as well as I was expecting, and I saw him yesterday, second time he ain't come, Larry Tate, who was the student government president at Florida A&M. Those of you who have the video, Base Theory on Evil, or the Oath Takers, after I left Florida A&M, the students had a massive demonstration on the campus, and the students' demonstration is on the video. Some of it is hilarious, Brother David, because at one point, the Student Truth Squad was out. I was telling them about when I was on a college campus that I would walk the students around in single file line. We would walk in single file line around the campus, and we would use it as psychological terrorism against the enemy. Well, if you look on the videotape, the students at Florida A&M went around the campus with this little truth squad. They had a video camera, had tape players, and they had flyers and had signs, and they walked in the classrooms while the teachers were teaching. So, but the little brigade was the Bogart Brigade. So as they walked around the campus, as they marched like this, right? It's the funniest thing I ever seen. But they was in the spirit, and man, at one point, they showed, you see the president of the school, Humphrey, being confronted by the students as he comes off the elevator to go into his office. Students have him blocked so he can't get in. And when you look down this long-ass hallway, you don't see, the students are sitting on the floor. You don't see nothing but a sea, and I ran down that hallway before. You don't see but a slew of students just all down the line, both sides. You see the police cameras there. The police are there with their cameras. And then you see the little student reporters there with their cameras. And so you got these camera outs there. Go ahead, baby. They're shooting at each other backwards and forwards. And I was very pleased with the students. They had their student reporters there. They were very disciplined. Well, at one point the police touched one of the sisters. The brothers defended the sister. And they say some police got hurt. None of the students got hurt. Police had the guns and the sticks. Students didn't have nothing. And so they charged the brother president. He has to call Tallahassee, Florida every Monday to report to his, it ain't a probation officer because he ain't been convicted. He has to report in every week because he's out of the state. He has to report in every week to the police in Tallahassee until his trial comes up. And we will all be going down there for the big trial of the students. Most of the charges, other students have been dropped. Again, they keep trying to get the students to say that Brother Coakley told them to do something, whatever it is they're calling it. But whatever it is they're calling it wasn't even it. And the students who they're blaming them for nothing other than to try to inhibit them from doing this type of thing again in the future. And on the video, they're confronted over the boule. The president and all the administrators are bubble mouthing, trying to explain their involvement. Students got right up there. The president finally decides to meet the students in this big room. So the students are there asking questions. He got all the administrators on the stage, and the students tell him about the boule. He said, "Well, how could you teach us? You in the boule, and you got your paw over the urn, and in the urn is the names. How the hell I'm gonna learn, and you can't name no names?" And so the point of showing it to you is to show you what happens in 2-3 nights. What can incite the students to be able to move forward and want to be effective, meeting some facts. If it was bullshit, then the students' disagreement would be considered frivolous and would have been wiped away from the administrators and nothing at all. But the strength of the attack was the facts. And they confront some professors and other things on this very, very powerful video. In fact, students do their own little lead-in. Brother looks in the camera and his eyes is blinking, he looking sad. He said, this is war correspondent, this war video. He said, it's not for the viewing of the week. The undecided. They had their own little thing, you know, they had the interviewers. It was really good. I was very, very proud of them. But then again, it adds into the danger of what it means when we show up. And I told you last week, I spent last week telling you about what a great time we had down in Atlanta 2 weeks ago. Those of you who were with me Wednesday night when we went to Georgetown got to see how Brother acts and reacts with white students. And for those that were there, and that was really one of the more milder ones, I'm pretty abusive on the white kids. One of the things I'm sure those who were there would be amused by was when I was asking the white kids, well, where do you come from? And so I went around the room and was asking, I said, well, you know, by the way, let me ask y'all where y'all from. So I'm going around and asking there's one Asian guy there, he comes in, he's answering all the questions. He's big guy in the back and shit. He's I forgot what his answer was, but the white students kind of looked at him like, Asian, you know, he ain't with us. Then I asked other white students, they either act like they didn't know. Some talked about the Garden of Eden or something. Mesopotamia. That was the Asian guy. Was talking Mesopotamia. I said, where's Mesopotamia? Oh, somewhere around Iraq.
Tigris and Euphrates.
Then the one little guy come in, had the little hat on, looked crazy. Remember he was sitting on the side? I said, the guy went over and sat next to him. I got the video. I sat next to him, put my arm around him.
Jeremiah.
No, not Jeremiah. That was the guy in the front. This guy was over on the side with the hat. And I said, where do white people come from? He said, from Africa. And I looked at him, all I said was, do you think the rest of them believe that? He just said, it's true, man, it's from Africa. We all come from the same people who come from Africa. Of course, the point I was trying to show them was that the Library of Congress still didn't know, but that was interesting. There's a lot of laughs there as I asked them various questions. Many of the white kids that were there, the majority of them were in the School of Foreign Service, which is Brother Bruce had provided was right above us. We were on the first floor, and it was right above us. And of course, there they had a Carol Quigley chair. Carol Quigley is the guy we always talk about who gives up the solid, good white source on the existence of the secret society, of the Rhodes Rothschild Secret Society, made up of the Round Table Group. By the way, mentioning Rothschild, and I have to really be prepared because some days I come here, I want to put some things in order. And you all bring me so much information. I spend a lot of my time reviewing the things that you bring me. And so I get a little disorientated. I lose my spot, something I'm trying to do before I start. But I appreciate all of you all because all of this is really good information. Brother had brought the magazine of the Smithsonian, and in it they're mentioning the lectures that are coming up. And they have one called A Portrait of the First Rothschild and His Time in cooperation with the Embassy of Israel and the DC Jewish Community Center, October 30th at 6:00 p.m. Resident members are $12, general admission $16, and it's on a book called Founder, A Portrait of the First Rothschild and His Time, on Viking Press by Amos Elon, E-L-O-N, Elon. And that's October 30th. Also got one called The World's to Conquer, The Life of Nelson Rockefeller, about the book The Life of Nelson Rockefeller by Kerry Reich. It says that Reich enjoyed unprecedented access to Rockefeller family archives. Now, I'm intrigued by all the people who have had this privilege. And what is the difference between the Rockefeller archives and the U.S. government archives? Scrutinized FBI files and interviewed some 350 people, many of whom had never spoken about Rockefeller on the record. In a captivating lecture, he examines Rockefeller's public and private life from New York to the Republican Party to the Vice President of the United States. And there was one other one in here I know you wanted to tell me. by way of mentioning to the record. Oh, Clash of Civilization. What? 836. Okay, great. There we go. Many of you have seen the flyer, may not have seen the flyer. I took a flyer that Brother Bruce had done for a program this guy and I had upstairs here over here in the ballroom. And I had, since it was Columbus Day, and I've been here a couple of years and I've done nothing. And I see Columbus is not an issue here, though we're in the District of Columbus. And even being in the African school roots, to know that they closed, there's one of the few African schools in the country that acknowledge white holidays. Most of them in Chicago give you Malcolm X Day off, Marcus Garvey Day off. They give you the same number of legal holidays that the white government gives you, but they just make it on the days of black heroes. So it's a little disappointing. Even the Roots brochure honored Jesse Jackson on his birthday. I hate to see that shit. That be given to students because they couldn't justify doing it if asked. But the flyer's Clash of Civilizations, which is a takeoff on an article that ran in Foreign Affairs. Who wrote the article Clash of Civilization, Brother James? He also wrote the article Crisis of Democracy, the 8th position paper of the Trilateral Commission. Close, you close. No, you were close, Samuel Huntington, very good, Brother James, very good. Well, you went and gave me some other white guy name. Believe it or not, Huntington will be here. This is one I will not miss. Samuel Huntington, Monday, December 2nd, will give a lecture called The Clash of Civilization, the Emerging World Order. And I think we all should be there. Where are these held at?
It says it in the
Yeah, holler out the location. Anyway, just let me read the bio. It says the fundamental source of conflict of the future, writes Mr. Huntington, will primarily be cultural rather than ideological or economic. As people increasingly define themselves by ethnicity and religion, the West will find itself at odds with civilizations that reject its ideals of democracy, human rights, liberty, the rule of law, and the separation of church and state. In a thought-provoking lecture, Samuel Huntington, director of the Olin Institute of Strategic Studies at Harvard, pictures a future of increasingly de-Westernization in international relations. He urges a greater understanding of non-Western civilizations and offers strategy for promoting cooperative relationships with Russia and Japan and for maintaining military superiority in the East and Southwest Asia. Huntington's book, Clash of Civilizations, published by Simon and Schuster in '96, is based on his article in '93 in Foreign Affairs. And as you all know, in the Council on Foreign Relations tape, or in the yearbook of the Council on Foreign Relations '95, the guy did that little column saying how influential the Clash of Civilizations article was, which is why I put it back on the flyer under the First World versus One World heading, which is the appropriate dichotomy when you're trying to describe, when we say New World Order, and we don't say it versus or against something, someone will believe that that is the only option. Years ago, the African nations pushed New World Economic Order, meaning that they would reappropriate the world's resources, but that phrase didn't tend to stick in the world community. And when it says New World Economic Order, you could just lose economic and have the same old shit. So it did not stick that the downtrodden countries versus these Western hunkies were not able to phrase themselves. And so the point we need to make in this particular lecture is that in, again, uniting those places where the people of color are, the Clash of Civilizations is really a colonial question. He said America will be at odds with countries of different ethnicity. Of course, that must not count you. And since we've studied the Clash of Civilization story, Brother Robert, in the Clash of Civilization, you're an anonymous black man on the street who happens to have an average, ordinary knowledge of foreign policy, knowing all of the hunkies who did everything against us. Being an average ordinary black black man that you are, in the Clash of Civilizations, what did you remember being odd about who they said would be at the final fight? Who would be there? They said not. So help them understand what it said. It lists certain ethnicities that would be around at the end, and who wasn't there? Us. And what did it say for Africa?
We'd be specters at the feast.
Well, that's good from another story in Foreign Policy. It was that, and possibly an Africa would be there for the Clash of Civilization. And so part of the alert that we put out in our own community is to make ourselves aware that the whites, now that Huntington has spent 3 years from the day of the article in '93, 3 years to make it into a book. I think we better get that book, like real quick, because the book is probably expanded. Now, just to show you the misappropriate goat nature of our leadership, go get the white boy D'Souza. Give him a volatile title. Niggas, ain't nothing wrong with niggas. Niggas ain't even been discriminated against. Every Negro leader in America beats his ass for the book.
Right.
Come out with something more vicious, more subtle, from a higher authority. Ain't got a nigga word on it. Ain't outside of where we've gone.
Like bell curve.
There ain't been no, some bump like the bell curve. They chase this shit. They do stories on it. They do plays on the bell curve and shit.
Or Andrew Hacker.
They do debates.
But the point is that more vicious, volatile white literature goes unmolested in the black community. And that's due to the misappropriated nature. We talked about last week how when we were trying to assess how was it that the black community on the subject even of New World Order, where there is no Afrocentric theory, and all you gotta do is just put the dollar up on the thing. Anybody want any drinks? The drinks are $1. You just put your dollar up on the tray up there. I guess we'll have grab a drink, break. Quick, no, go ahead, please. Go ahead. That's why I said it. That's why I said it. And the Clash of Civilization is far more volatile, but it does not draw that level of reaction. And that's part of the danger, that the leadership is stuck into a situation where certain remedies are not available to it. Talking against whites, higher whites, is off limits. We discussed last week, you would never catch black leadership saying fuck Rockefeller, because they would consider that undignified in approaching an enemy. An enemy whose eyes I would scratch out, balls I would step to death. I can make it more lucid, but I won't, because I ain't sadistic. I'll far more be effective than sadistic. But the fact that, why are we so reserved when it comes to fighting an enemy? And the enemy is so volatile and arrogant in being clear about its goals and objectives.
I just want to make a point.
Excuse me a second, bro. So just hold on. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
No, seriously, they have a gentleman's agreement. It's like in Europe, all car manufacturers have a gentleman's agreement amongst themselves that all cars can only go 155 miles per hour. So they have this agreement with each other. That's it. So they have a limit.
Right.
So evidently, there's some gentleman's agreement.
So a gentleman is a gentleman, huh?
Right.
Okay. One of the things that we were trying to emphasize, especially last week, was that once living within those bounds. Oh, brother, I need you to find the address where the meetings are, because I want to read that into the record. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, we'll have him holler that out. So we're trying to break what Gunnar Myrdal called the American Dilemma. And last week, I read you a little bit from a section that he had on leadership. And I need to bring the tape out that I did here a couple of years ago called The Crisis in Black Leadership. A moderation, a revolution. What's the difference between a protest and a whole test? Or as some would say, a horror test. Or some just can't say whole test straight up. The point to that was that the leadership was in check. Now, as we went back, last week you all know we brought up information that suggested that maybe the Boule was in trouble in its earlier years, far more in trouble than it is today. But then again, in compensation for the fact that all of these cities know of it now, they ain't in so good a shape because they ain't never been, the Boule ain't never been in its history in the shape it's in right now. And I don't mean good, I mean on shake. Because they on shake because we put them on bake. So they on shake. And I went back and I was looking at Gunner today, and in the back, he's giving this question about leadership. He wants to do this study for whites. How does the Negro leader operate? To what extent and how does he utilize the white and Negro press, the Negro organizations of various fronts? To what extent does a Negro leader become pressed into a dual standard of behavior in order to serve his two constituents? It suggests that Negro leadership has two constituents. A real Negro leader has two constituents. One, his primary constituent for being the whites. Two, his constituent that he's to influence, the blacks. And it says, how does he become pressed into the dual standard of behavior in order to serve his two constituencies, the white leaders and the Negro community? How does he make a choice among the necessary compromises, advantageous compromises, and the plain selling out of Negro interest? How does he strike a balance between personal and group opportunism? What techniques? Oh, I'm sure you're right. How you doing, Brother Larry? What techniques? I'm just talking about you. This is the Brother Larry. How you doing, sister? Pleasure. Appreciate you being here. This is Brother Larry that I mentioned to you earlier. Was president at FAM, who I told you they may have to call in every month or week or something. Every week. Every Tuesday. I told him every Monday, so I was off 5 days. Right. He has to call in because he's out of the district of Tallahassee. And I mentioned to you last week about why we wanted strong street pressure in areas where there's state capitals. And we've been spending some time in state capitals in Indianapolis. What's the state capital of Kentucky? Frankfurt, where we were at Kentucky State. Atlanta, for Georgia, where we were last week. Tallahassee, for Florida, and many more in Indianapolis and others. Columbus, Ohio, for Ohio. We ain't strong in Springfield, Illinois, but we got some friends down there. Springfield is state capital, a hotel, a few hicks, and that's it. Anyway, says the question opens up to the problems of interrelations between functioning Negro leaders and the white leaders, and on one hand between the Negro leaders and the Negro followers on the other hand. More specifically, we want to know how much influence and what sort of influence do those prominent Negroes have? In what circles of the white and Negro population is their influence exerted? What deliveries to the whites and to the Negroes do they promise? Which do they actually make or keep? And it was promoting the dilemma. This is probably a matter of tradition, but to a greater extent it corresponds to the real interests of whites. It is apparent to the observer that whites control the appointment and eventual dismissal of a number of Negro leaders and greatly promotes or hinders the rise of most of the others. And this was about their studying the impact of the Negro leadership, again, in whether or not it would be safe to leave the Negroes incarcerated for the World War II. There's some significant literature that we need to examine. And we know that was said over the course, in the very first lecture, New World Order's Mysterious Deaths and the New World Order. We heard Jesse Jackson give his version of what Marty Gunthoff said.
In reading the readings you just did, maybe the next time or a future time you should get another book, because a lot of that echoes a book that I read years ago up on the hill, and you never mentioned it yet, and you probably should. The rise of the crisis of the Negro intellectual by Howard Cruz.
Oh yeah, very paramount.
That shows that
the crisis of the Negro intellectual, right? In fact, he had some good chapters in there.
Yeah.
One chapter on anti-Semitism was very good for me back in Chicago when I was being attacked. That was a great help. You don't see that book around much anymore. It was
Nobody talk about it.
But a
it's
lot
not
of
in print anymore.
but a lot of that same information was in the book Plural but Equal.
What is
Harold
it?
Cruz. His other book, Plural but Equal.
Okay, Plural but Equal by Harold Cruz. Okay, and who remembers Jesse Jackson's version of similar to Sidney Wilhelm's "Who Needs the Negro"? What did Jesse Jackson say would be necessary for blacks to survive through the year 2000?
Must be
We
useful.
must become necessary.
He said it must be what, Brother David?
Must become necessary.
Must be necessary to who, Brother James?
White.
To the crackers, to the dominant, very good, to the dominant culture. It must remain necessary to the dominant culture. This is Ebony's 85 issue on the year 2000.
Right.
In fact, in that issue, they said that blacks wouldn't be free in South Africa to the year 2050 or something like that. Something that showed they were so close to the white man, they never thought he'd let go. And that doesn't mean that he let go now. Or one of the things about tomorrow I am most appreciative of is that Winnie Mandela
Yes.
will be speaking. And she will be the first speaker in the history of 2 years of atoning who actually may get up there and actually speak her mind. I hope that contrary to many of those others who were speaking, who couldn't say most of the shit that needed to be said. And last year I didn't hear the things that needed to be said. Why, imagine you got 800 million people watching you worldwide. You sitting up there talking about how you created Kwanzaa. All this opportunity, you know. But Bevel and Bob Law and Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Jesse Jr. Finally, Winnie Mandela. I mean, let's just wish for the sister that she kick all that ass tomorrow. And that some shit just get to breaking out and shit when she fires them up, cause you watch. Let her get to firing that shit up. Watch somebody come up on stage and be doing shit like this. That's some other stop signs up there. You watch. Or watch TV go out. Watch TV go out tomorrow when she be up there talking. Watch shit get blurred up and shit. So I'm telling you today, what's going to happen? All things being fair, she should be throwing down. So you know, we're going to get interested to see how it's going to work tomorrow. So Jesse said we need to remain necessary to the dominant culture. And of course, we've listened to in the past, I'm going to have to again get this into the record one of these nights. We've heard him say how he was had amnesia at the Council on Foreign Relations meeting. And his recollection of his relationship to New World Order is clouded by his closeness and exclusivity of that closeness to the oath takers. And that's excessively important to us. Many times we've talked over these last couple of weeks about the assassination of the leadership. And I don't know how you cameras going to make it because I got the overhead set up this way. I don't know. Can you see it down? Unless we can put it up in the center. Brother Donald, can you scoot your camera around?
I can make it happen.
Yeah, come on. Can you get it, Brother Bud? That bullet one. Since bullet one. Since the bullet one, that it is a good revolutionary strategy to be against something and to be against the murder of that something as a revolutionary tool. In other words, the instigation of a revolution against an enemy needs a legal justification. We have sought it, we have laid the premise far more than any cadre you have ever been around in this country. Laid the premise through several avenues for revolution. On the illegality of that Constitution, the illegality of that, as well as the fact that oath takers were obstacles. The murder, the Constitution, the oath takers, the secret societies, all were laid in a way to compel good strategy. Most of the black leadership resist what has been labeled conspiracy theory. I don't know, aside of Dick Gregory's book with Mark Lane, and you help me, I don't know what writers who are black are in the conspiracy arena, per se. From Bruce Nelson, Assassination of Martin King books, basically written by whites. Assassination of Malcolm X books, basically written by whites. I just thought of something just ran across my head. The Judas Factor, written by a black man. One of the few, and actually, as I reread it this week, probably the best black book. Now, I still don't know. I would like to talk to Carl Evans to know how much whites helped or participated or assisted his research in getting some of the information. One of the things I'm pretty clear about is if you go through several books, Malcolm X, the FBI files of Malcolm X, y'all heard of that?
Yeah.
You got that? Where'd it go? Maybe I left it. The FBI files of Malcolm X. If you look to the back of that book, towards the back of that book, you will see whites, after Malcolm is dead, fighting Malcolm X Day celebrations. They're worried about people emulating Malcolm. Now, they had to kill Malcolm twice to make him dead.
Check.
They killed him, and then years later, with the recurrence of the movie and the Spike Lee book and all the rest of that, they killed him again. And they killed him a second time because he was probably as strong after the first round. The eggs, free tape. Just a joke. And it had gotten so bad that after the movie, people were taking the X off. I was giving away free tapes for anybody who had any X or any other such thing on. And every week, Juan carries an X out in his bag, waiting for me to say free tape for anybody with an X. So, see, he pulled his hat out while I was saying the fact about the X. And still, X pretty much been wiped out. Again, those who've been, the most telling you could get is from a vendor who would tell you that he can't sell nothing with X on it no more. It just doesn't sell. Yes, but
What
great.
about Lewis Lomax, the one who died mysteriously on the highway?
Yeah.
About to do something with the investigation in '72, right?
Right, he was making a movie showing that John Ali was FBI man and had asked the FBI, and you can find the files related to the FBI's apprehension of Lewis Lomax because he was bringing out the relationship with John
He died on
Ali.
the highway, right? On a car accident or something?
I couldn't tell you exactly. Yes, it's alleged that he died in a car
Before you
accident.
can make it.
Point is that there is not a strong enough base in the black community using murder as a strategy to fight an enemy. There is not a strong enough research informational base in our neighborhood to lay the appropriate amount of groundwork to make strength. Yes, brother.
Yeah, this brother told me a while back, if you want to know what Malcolm was all about, read his speeches. So I started reading a lot of the books of the speeches. And I came across a part in one of his books where he said that Elijah Muhammad made a deal with a rich white man in Texas for him not to meet with the Klan. I mean, not to show up when the Klan is having a function, and the Klan won't show up to none of their functions when they're having something. I always want to know who was that rich white man that they had. They gave him land and money to do this. I always want to know who.
I don't know, but I too had just read back through that part where Malcolm was talking about the relationship between Elijah Muhammad and the Ku Klux Klan and others. I could carry that up to Elijah Muhammad's relationship with Mayor Daley, who was close to Ku Klux Klan I ever saw in Chicago as a youth. And Elijah Muhammad had the same very positive relationship. Again, remember that it was Elijah Muhammad chastising Malcolm for his comments, allegedly, his comments against a white man, Kennedy, feeling that the nation would be destroyed by other whites if their sacred Kennedy had been repudiated. And of course, the fact is that the whites sought to destroy the nation anyway. The fact that Elijah Muhammad believed, if he did, that there could be a deal with a white, and a white would uphold the deal, would make the first white in the history of whites to uphold the deal to a black. So we know that that ain't happened now, it didn't happen then. So it needs to be a stronger base. The leadership ain't in the conspiracy theory. I think outside, in fact, in regards to conspiracy and our leadership, repudiation of their involvement in a conspiracy is about the extent of their discussion about conspiracy in the black community. I didn't do that. Jesse has to repudiate his relationship with Martin. The minister has to explain his relationship around Malcolm. Bevel has to explain his relationship around Martin. If you start walking down the leadership, they're more likely, when discussing conspiracy, spend their time discussing what they didn't do the day we alleged one. Just notice unique when you are. I said last week that you don't kill someone until you have someone in the what? In the on-deck circle. So everywhere there was a killing, there was someone in the waiting. Whether it was Tim Evans waiting for Harold Washington, or was it Louis Farrakhan waiting on Malcolm X? Was it, or John Ali, who was really more, who rose more administratively, while the minister rose more dramatically into the public as the titular heads of the Nation of Islam, though Elijah Muhammad was still the organizational head. I also mentioned that no way in this world would Louis Farrakhan ever have headed the Nation of Islam unless it had been broken down. Right. He could never have headed it because, not being one of the sons of the father, he was never in the line for leadership. So you could imagine being in an organization 50 years being his national spokesperson. That you could never be it because you weren't born it. And so we got Jesse Jackson. And I think we have probably done a good job in the last days of Martin King in describing the fact that Jesse was intensely being incubated. And the FBI had worked very hard preparing to make someone available for Martin King's demise. So I call upon not the leadership, for I know their options against the enemy have been reduced or sold away, leaving a limited, restricted strategy base of options in opposition to a growing enemy. Your options against an enemy, if you could swing from murder to humiliation in your option base, your effectiveness will be increased if you have all of these options available to you. If you reduce yourself to civilized options, you'll never make it in a guerrilla warfare world. We have mentioned that last week the Council on Foreign Relations in their House organ, Foreign Affairs, gave a story called Post-Modern Terrorism. And it said that as we head towards the millennium, what tends to happen every millennium?
That's Samson.
Conspiracies, soothsayers, doomsday.
End of the world.
What's that place in Virginia they said?
Hold on, Baba, don't start that. Go ahead. What did it say?
It's
Conspiracy theories rise.
Here we go. Postmodern Terrorism by Walter Lacour. It said what tends to rise?
Conspiracy theories rise and doomsday soothsayers.
Apocalyptic soothsayer doomsday theorists tend to be magnified or multiplied as we turn towards the change of millennium. And here it discussed many things about Nostradamus and Antichrist and other things that you could never find in literature. Do you understand? I don't think you all pick up on this, but you understand how close we are?
Yes.
We sitting here with the ones who never wanted to acknowledge the reality of life as we see it. But they're compelled to spend most of their day. They're compelled to spend most of their day repudiating our reality. But you have to understand, there was a moment when there was no question to repudiate. Now, they're picking, one of the things we notice is that they want to pick who it is that they answer to represent the victim. So usually if it's New World Order, it's always white people who are bringing up New World Order, and that whites are ridiculing or belittling these whites. And we mentioned that you can take the same literature that they're repudiating, walk into another arena and find them acknowledging and dialogue about it. They have the wrong people be fighting the big fights. But that's all right. Part of why they keep picking the wrong people is that they've learned where the right people are. And you will greatly underestimate where we are at this moment when the Post got to do a 4-page story talking of reviewing conspiracy theories in the black community, written by a white man. And spent all day doing that. And I listen today, and I take the portion with Castillo, the DEA agent, who spoke today in, I mean, this thing in 10 minutes. He said more than the whole drug story said. He's been on, he's a DEA guy that testified a couple of weeks ago at the hotel that nobody did a story on. We didn't even mention his name, except for to repudiate him in the Washington Times. Washington Post wouldn't even mention his name until they did its story 3 weeks later. The story last Friday, the cleanup story. Castillo said, he said, not only did I go to the hangar and see the drugs, but I interviewed the pilots. The pilots showed me the flight plans. And he went through the whole thing. He said the guy, you got to pick up on, he said the guy who's the number 2-3 man in the DEA right now is the guy that went and told him, you better quit fucking around talking about these drugs you seeing and start talking about you thought you saw, or you better say you alleged that you saw. He said, but I saw the drugs. I saw the hangar. He said, you better say alleged or you're going to get fired. And so he understood that he was being threatened. He gave his patriotic call about how he loves Americans. He was on with Dick Gregory today at 10:15 or so, but it was just compelling evidence. Point to it is that, do you understand that this shit is out of control? I always tried to explain something to you all that we didn't really care what the whites said, that in the black neighborhood we could set our own tempo. We can make our own base theory on knowledge. We can agree that these things are true and just walk to our own shit. Don't even worry about what the fuck. We don't need to worry about what they say. We have our own sources. I report to you from New York, report to you from Atlanta, report to you from up against the wall. We don't need to be reported to from them. We can do these things ourselves. We have whites in such major disagreement with other whites. I watched Kardashian on Barbara Walters last week. They were using his interview against OJ, but in actuality, the shit he dropped on old Jewish boy was the deepest of all, that he said old boy tried to cut a deal with his ass in it. What's the white boy's name? Shapiro. That Shapiro tried to cut a deal to have him plead guilty with OJ. And he told on him. And then to cover him, OJ said, well, I don't agree with what he's saying, but I'm still his friend. OJ said, well, I wasn't there when what's his name? I can't remember his name. Shapiro, he said, I wasn't there when Shapiro said that, but I'm still Kardashian's friend. I know why he wrote the book. But the point of it is that you're watching whites fight and telling all the whites. Sister brought up a good point that Kardashian can't make no money, so he got to get out here and do what what's his name? Shapiro did a long time ago, which was to repudiate what you just did. When you do something for a black, you got to wash your hands immediately and shit. You got to wash your hands up. You got to say, well, you know, shit, it was dirt on my hands. I was washing my hands, and the nigga went off. The nigga got off. It just got right off my hands like dirt and soap. And so it's that type of a thing that whites need to tell other whites. And you can see that these whites needed to tell other whites that I'm not really with the black thing, but I was just working with the black thing for a minute. And so they had to wash their hands. You see Kardashian, he washing his hands, all of them washing their hands. But this is a monumental moment in the history of the world that the shit is up-tempo like it is. Yes?
Getting back to Jesse Jackson, I remembered something I heard about a year ago on Igor Lindsay show. He was stating, well, someone of his callers called him, well, we're about the Jesse Jackson guy. And he said, well, I consider Jesse, this is what G. Gordon Liddy said, to be an honorable man. And I consider him a good friend of mine. I hope he considers me the same. And that's the kind of company that Mr. Jackson is keeping. They're very good, close friends.
Oh, I know some prostitutes with more irreputable character than that he knows well. No question. And of course, we mentioned here in this book, the best-selling biography of the legendary trial lawyer Edward Bennett Williams by Evan Thomas, co-author of The Wise Men. Many of you all know we mentioned the book The Wise Men, which is about Skull and Bones and the aristocratic John McCoy, Abel Harriman, all of the rich top whites. The book The Wise Men, the Dulles brothers. And he wrote this book, A Man to See. And in it he has this encounter with Jesse Jackson, saying that Jesse Jackson was called off of the Anheuser-Busch boycott. And he says when the establishment turned on Jackson, he came back to Williams. In '77, Hubert Humphrey had seen a piece on 60 Minutes describing Jackson's attempt to motivate inner-city youths to get education. Humphrey urged HEW Secretary Joe Califano, who helped kill who? Kennedy. There you go. So you can't fool one of my friends. I'm glad just to know y'all. I swear to God. I didn't even get to read the opening about how proud I was of y'all. Because I know y'all don't even need the books to know the stuff. Humphrey urged HEW Secretary Joe Califano to fund the program. Jackson gratefully asked Califano for $25,000. Califano told him he needed $1 million and gave the black leader grants that ultimately totaled $6 million. Yeah, nigga go ask for $25,000. White man say, oh, you on the high nigga approval list. He give him $6 million. Says when federal auditors asked to look at Jackson's books early in the Reagan administration, they found chaos. Jackson's organization, Push for Excel, was unable to account for over $1 million in money. The matter was referred to the Justice Department. You all know we talked about that story. Jackson came to Williams claiming that he was a victim of a vendetta by the Republicans. The case was dragging on, producing unflattering newspaper stories at the time when Jackson was trying to raise money for his '88 presidential campaign. Could Williams help him at justice? This was just the sort of high-level favor that Williams relished doing. He was asked to meet with Justice Department officials, anticipating that he would need all of his wits to head off a criminal investigation. In fact, he discovered at the private meeting in September of '87 that the department had no intentions of prosecuting Jackson or his organization. Officials said they had no evidence of fraud. Williams was able to push along a $500,000 settlement, and insulating headlines, insinuating headlines went away. A grateful Jackson came back for more. Would Williams agree to run his '88 presidential campaign? This time, Williams begged off. Of course, Ron Brown ran his '88 campaign. He said he asked Edward Bennett Williams first, then he went to see the other man to see Ron Brown. Well, Edward Bennett Williams and Ron Brown got something in common. What is that? Yeah. Dead, right? They dead in the door now.
He on the Orioles, right?
Yeah, he owned the Baltimore Orioles. For years they had Frank Robinson and all that. He was a big-time attorney up in here as well. In fact, for a while, I think he even had the Redskins or something too, didn't he? Anyway, it takes us into the courtrooms of Williams' performance as he defends the Godfather, Frank Costello, Jimmy Hoffa. He defended Jimmy Hoffa versus Lil Kennedy. Frank Sinatra, the Washington Post, and others, as well as behind the scenes where witnesses are coached, the traps are set, the deals are cut. In addition to being a lawyer of unprecedented influence, Williams was also an important Washington insider, privy to many of the secrets of America's most powerful men. Thomas tells the truth behind the scenes that made Williams one of the most talked about public figures of his time, including Williams' role in the publication of the Pentagon Papers and possibly that Williams was deep throat. Williams' papers, he had exclusive access to Williams' papers. The man to see is an unprecedented look at the strategies and influence of this exceptional man. written by Evan Thomas, who comes up out of Newsweek or Washington Post. Again, relationships and power. So instead of Jesse Jackson having something against Edward Bennett Williams for representing the Mafia boys, he looks at him as somebody who he would go to get what he gave the Mafia boys, protection. I want the protection you gave the Mafia boys. And so he saw it and he got it for some reason. Now, in the depths of the Africans that we had talked about in the past, Martin and Malcolm, in this fight of First World versus One World, some of the people who were involved, when I was reading the Judas Factor this week, I denoted how many times he mentioned that there was in Malcolm's file, CIA file, information from the CIA counterintelligence head, the head of counterintelligence of the CIA, or used to be head of plans. Today it's called operations. What do they call that division that do the CIA dirty work? This is the most sinister, little known segment of the CIA. Now, just to show you the impact that whites have had on us in numbing us on New World Order, I want you all to tell me who was the CIA head of counterintelligence during the time they was fucking up Malcolm?
Bush?
He just died.
Kobe? It was James.
He was at the Ford Foundation.
The old white guy.
Is it Bundy?
Somebody said old white guy. Yeah, it was an old white guy right there. All old white
Claire
guys.
George?
No, and George Bundy was National Security Advisor. And so he would be, what I want to do now is to draw for you the names of the people who you should know, who were around the heroes that you love and respect, who had something to do with their death, but who are not suspects, not a mention, not even an issue today. Oh, I'm working the cameraman out today. So y'all
He
see
died at NIH?
Huh?
He died in NIH?
What's NIH?
National Institute of Health.
Did who die NIH?
The CIA guy.
Did the CIA die NHI? Did not NIH? You got me going.
You want to know the name of the CIA guy?
Yeah, who was the head of counterintelligence
Right,
of the CIA?
old-
Now, he mentioned the name of Bundy. Which Bundy you want?
Big George.
Mick George. Let's put Mick George down. He wasn't a job. Huh?
It wasn't Claire George.
Take.
either, man.
Okay, it wasn't Mick George Bundy, but he's a name we want to mention. I don't want to lose his name since you. Oh, look at Juan going back to his notes and shit. Juan, you got the head of counterintelligence of CIA in that book, buddy. I got to take the book from you. Okay, now, Bundy is good. This is not what's that murder of Bundy? They see it? Damn. See how y'all fuck me up? Now I say I don't Ted, everybody was Ted. I was probably the largest audience participation of the night. It's a mass murderer. Let's do word association. Jeffrey. Back. Thank you, baby. Okay, we don't want to forget him. He was what? National Security Advisor.
He was at the Ford Foundation.
Yeah, he's subsequent, but Malcolm is dead by the time he gets to the Ford Foundation.
Was it the guy that died and went off on the boat? Kobe?
The guy that went off on the boat. No, William Colby was head of the CIA.
You talking about James?
Now you can see.
James Angleton?
Oh,
Yeah, he kicked it finally.
James Angleton.
there you go. Come on up here, brother. I had to give you a special hand for that. Gotta give him a special hand for that. Tape, we'll give him your tape, Dave. Dave's gonna buy a tape for brother.
He had glasses.
Huh?
He had glasses, I think.
He had glasses.
I remember how he looked.
You remember how he looked?
Yeah, he had white guy with glasses. That's all I know.
What do you remember about him? Anybody know anything about him? James Allington. He's got the right guy. He's the right guy. James Allington.
Angleton or something like that.
Allington.
Yeah.
Allington.
I can't pronounce. I can't spell his name.
What is very important about him, you should never forget, is he's Israeli. He's an Israeli. He's Jewish. He's an Israeli. And he dominated CIA counterintelligence, and he slanted it the Mossad way.
That's right.
And that's what you got to know about him, because his impact on the CIA and his ethnicity, the exercising of his ethnicity into his job, had him especially in tune to fucking Lumumba, fucking Malcolm, fucking Martin. Now, the Judas Factor will point out to you that the goal was to kill Martin and Malcolm in the same damn month of February of 65. When Martin got that letter that was egging him on to suicide, he got the letter on February 9th. Malcolm was dead February 21st. Burke Marshall. Y'all remember Burke Marshall?
Justice Department?
Huh?
Justice Department.
Justice Department. Right. Well, what do you remember about Burke Marshall, Robert? Average ordinary black man. Yeah. See, I show you that the average ordinary black man is a Superman at worst. Average ordinary marathon running black man who knows. See, this is the point of this is that whites don't understand that the average ordinary black people know more than most extraordinary whites who are succeeding on obedience, not on excellence. Whites are not compelled to excellence, they're compelled to toe the line. A good white that toes the line for a long period of time is rewarded. Most of the heads of your major white corporations, especially your utilities, are made up of 30 and 40-year men. These are men who were the meter readers, who became district meter reader, who became vice president of meter reading, who became director of operations, who became chairman of the board. I'm telling you, you got to walk through that. If you study those men, you will find that most of the corporate heads, and they are, it's like watching the movie The China Syndrome. You remember that? You remember the corporate pressure being put down the line as they're to suffocate an interrogation into the volatility of a nuclear reactor? What do you remember about Burke Marshall, you said?
Alex Haley went to Burke Marshall and told him that Malcolm was having Sister Ella.
Oh, what's that now?
He had went to Burke Marshall and told him that Alex Haley had Sister Ella. He gave Malcolm money.
Why did he? So Burke Marshall was doing what? What was he asking Haley?
He's asking Alex Haley, what was Malcolm doing?
He is asking Alex Haley, where did Malcolm get his money from? And Haley says he getting it from his sister Ella. And that was because the CIA was saying that Malcolm was getting his money and started naming all these foreign leaders. But Alex Haley said Malcolm, like Steve Coakley, ain't got no money. Right? Is that right? I was saying right. So now I want to tell you tonight, if CIA put out some report talking about how we better kill Steve Coakley tomorrow because he got unlimited financing, I'm reminding all y'all tonight that they lying big time. Right, Jack. But the point is that this is what I want to tell you is that as I read the turning point in most of the men who were murdered by whites, the whites used the little white lie trick to compensate when the facts just didn't justify the executive action. It was remember, they had to distort the Hussein thing to get that whole thing, because they had to one egg him into doing the thing, and they had to jump over and act like they were surprised he did it. They had to put a little white lie in there. Vietnam, they had to put a little white lie on the Gulf of Tonkin, saying that boat attacked our boat, therefore we bombed their country. There's a point when you need this little white lie. You need this. Malcolm is getting, they said Malcolm is getting unlimited funding from Nasser of Egypt. Therefore, we better kill Malcolm because he got this unlimited funding. Nasser gave Malcolm 20 scholarships to give to 20 students, none of which Malcolm's even children qualified for. But the CIA called it secret funding from Nasser. And what the Judas Factor does so effectively is it relays not only those people who Malcolm were working with in setting up his attack towards the United Nations, but how they were all attacked after Malcolm's death, how damn near each one of them were either overthrown or assassinated. A whole scoop of them. Richard Helms was Allington's assistant at the CIA. Y'all ever heard of Richard Helms? Yeah. Richard Helms was Allington's assistant. I'm not spelling his name right. I spell his name for you right now, exactly for the record. What's the time? Time.
9:29.
See, I want to put Alex's name in here correctly, just for the record. There we go. I'm spelling it real wrong. Angleton. James first name. Angleton. James Angleton. And of course, he was heavily involved in the CIA's Oswald. You got a whole slew of things. These same guys worked all of these shifts. You got a guy coming out of Kennedy, killing Kennedy, preparing for the killing of Malcolm. Coming out of the killing of Malcolm, preparing for the killing of Martin. Coming out of the killing of Martin, preparing for the assassination and killing of the Black Panthers. Coming out of the killing of Black Panthers, preparing for Kent State, Jackson State, Watergate, Nixon. You got these guys, you got a group of guys, and you know the pattern was clear from the Bay of Pigs to the Watergate Hotel. It was the same damn people. Cuban exiles and the whole crew surrounding them. So you have a series of people who have a series of deaths on their hands, never only in white circles are they responsible or held accountable for the actions that they have taken. And that's especially important to us. Who were some of the other people who were around during that time of the attack on Malcolm? What was the police agency in New York that had one of its members right there with Malcolm, giving him mouth to mouth when he was shot? Dean Rob. What agency did he work for?
Police.
Yeah, well, what police?
New York police.
Okay, well, what do they call that? What unit? Boss. Boss. Okay, watch this. Who was the mayor of New York?
Daly. No.
Wrong. Wrong Daly, wrong Rockefeller. Who was the mayor of New York? In other words, if somebody put these people on Malcolm, you ought to know who they are. Who? You all know Gene Roberts' name. He was a little idiot who did what he was told. Who told him what to do? Who was the mayor of New York? Okay, just come back next week and somebody tell me who the mayor of New York was. Who? I don't know. Lindsay was a mayor of New York, but I don't think he was mayor during that time, but then again, maybe he was. You gotta tell me you know for sure. What's her name? I saw Bob Hope play in. Anyway, who else we got? Of course, you all know that part of it was done by the governor. Who was the governor?
Rockefeller, Nelson Rockefeller.
Nelson Rockefeller, okay? But Nelson Rockefeller ain't accused of doing nothing to Malcolm. Not even insinuated his relationship with Nelson. Maybe we ought to go to this book. When man do the book on Nelson Rockefeller, since he had all Nelson's papers, I ought to go there and ask, say, you see in there, well, Nelson Rockefeller wanted to fuck up Malcolm X? We do know in the Judas Factor that there's comments in there from Nelson Rockefeller about how Malcolm X had to be stopped. His impact in New York had to be neutralized. And that's interesting too. If you go through these books, notice how, go through any book on the Rockefeller, see if you see any comments in there about the Nation of Islam or Muslims, anything. It's almost as if in their world you don't see him exist, and in the Muslims' world you don't hear him utter. How do they have such a mutual exclusivity, never to name each other in their name? Now, Nelson Rockefeller, who was Secretary of State, was very instrumental. I was just reading Carl Rowan. We talked about last week about the role of the Boule. And that the white man would have never killed black leadership if he didn't have another leadership that he felt he could count on. Right. So I would kill these other black leaders because I knew I could fall back on these bougie, propped up bourgeoisie Negroes. I could count on them for leadership in place of these other ones who were truly leading the people who I did not want. So if I killed them, I make them hear Whitney Young or Hugh Price or somebody like that. So who was Secretary of State?
Dean Rusk.
Dean Rusk, all right? Yeah. Where do we know him coming from, Greg?
The Rockefeller Foundation.
Very good. And he was also a what?
CFR.
Oh, yeah, he was chairman of the board.
Okay.
And he's Skull and Bones guy?
Huh?
He's a Skull and Bones guy?
No, he's Rose Scholar. Rose Scholar. He's also the man who brought Jimmy Carter to David Rockefeller and put him in the Trilateral Commission. Dean Rusk, Rose Scholar, Secretary of State. Dean Russ, remember, was primarily responsible for keeping Malcolm out of France, that forced him home, that put him on the fast track to death. We mentioned earlier a guy, Burke Marshall. Burke Marshall is interesting because solely, we went around the country talking about page 418 of the autobiography of Malcolm X before the movie, before the page was even looked at as having any significance beyond what we were seeing. And I remember in these parts when there used to be Malcolm X rallies and shit at Blackburn and stuff. They don't have. So it's a shame you come into Howard in this period of such quiet. You come in what they should call the silent decade of Howard, because the things that are hushed up so used to be every week you could see all kind of stuff. But of course it was on the 418 that Burke Marshall, as Brother Robert said, was suggesting that he needed to know how much money Malcolm was getting. The only problem was Burke Marshall was the Justice Department head of the Civil Rights Division. Now the head of the Civil Rights Division has nowhere in his job that he's to go investigate the financial viability of a black leader. Right. He's head of the Civil Rights Division. At this time when there ain't even civil rights, barely they done passed the 64 Civil Rights Act. Right. He run around and investigate. No wonder there was so little civil rights and that he was out investigating. But what we basically denoted was that in the Judas Factor, you pick up this comment about Burke Marshall being responsible on behalf of the CIA of establishing Malcolm's money. Now, it says here, since the FBI here we go. It says they were allegedly claimed that these nations had donated $100,000 a year for many years to black nationalist movements in America. The matter was obviously one of great political sensitivity. Both this page 254 Judas Factor, in the chapter called The New Alliance. The State Department and the CIA memo said, considered the matter one of sufficient importance, discussed with President Johnson, who in turn asked J. Edgar Hoover to secure further information which he might be able to develop. The FBI investigation, the CIA memo noted, was a complete failure. In fact, the CIA knew the allegations were groundless. In an FBI memorandum dated July 25th, a copy of which was sent to clandestine services, an agent specifically stated, quote, the informant said he did not mean to imply that Africans were financing Malcolm X. Now, the allegation is Africans financing Malcolm X. Remember that probability scale? Probability scale is what? What's the probability scale?
Intention plus capability equals threat.
Intentions plus capability equal threat. Malcolm's going to slow down the New World Order by jamming up the United Nations with a monstrous vote in the General Assembly. So, intentions voiced, put the resolution in, hooking South Africa with the Negro lack of rights in America, hook them two together on the resolution in the UN World Court. This is discussed and put forth in 61. Is rediscussed and put forth in another form in 63. Now in 65, it's getting ready to go full steam in January, and it's going to be a big conference March 3rd. When was Malcolm killed? So March 3rd is going to be this big conference where Malcolm, Che Rivera, everybody getting together in the world, the Bang Dung Conference, the revisited version, are coming back to do heavy battle at the UN using South Africa, American segregation in the UN, causing genocide. All the white writers, the brother very appropriately brings up, played down that Malcolm had even tried this, and many of them, including that white boy Peter Goldman, said that them countries didn't even put the resolution in. And of course they did, and he mentions that it was printed way deep in the New York Times, little bitty column, African resolutions put in, resolution before a world court, accusing America, South Africa, linked together in racism, white supremacy, all that shit. Ain't never been that close. They took all of that out. You don't hear much of that. Now, they need the reason to justify making the move on Malcolm, so they get an informant that says something, but they say the informant says something that the informant didn't say. Now, those of you who are informants, you can see that you could be a well-meaning informant, and you could think you're giving the right information. But to an enemy, just you being an informant is enough to screw your information into any way they want to make it to justify what they want to do. Says the FBI CIA knew the allegations were groundless. FBI memo said that the agent specifically stated that the informant said he didn't imply that Africans were financing Malcolm. Since the FBI had failed to, quote, penetrate the situation, the CIA memo stated Marshall may possibly go to New York himself to investigate the matter. The CIA memo stated that Marshall may possibly go to New York himself to investigate the matter. Reed, the clandestine services agent, said wanted the CIA to penetrate Malcolm's domestic activities and, quote, travels to Africa to determine what political or financial support he may be picking up along the way. I remarked to Reed that there were certain inhibitions concerning our activities with respect to citizens of the United States. Reed, however, insisted that Clandestine Services Act, after all, Malcolm has, for all political purposes, renounced his U.S. citizenship. In view of clandestine services' proclivity to orchestrate assassination of perceived threats, intentions plus capability equal to the United States, one wonders what actions or information was actually being sought against Malcolm. They started to blame Malcolm's speeches for inciting riots. Talking about Malcolm being poisoned in July. Malcolm X was formally presented his position to the OAU conference. He went to the Nile Hilton in Cairo for dinner with Milton Henry and others in their entourage. He was uncomfortable because he observed two white men had been trailing him all day, were sitting nearby watching him eat. This was one agent especially who irritated Malcolm. He wouldn't eat without him being at the next table. Suddenly Malcolm turned pale as though he was having a heart attack. Panicked, Henry summoned medical help. Quote, he would have died if I hadn't been able to get him to the hospital in a hurry. After Malcolm's stomach was pumped, the contents were analyzed. The analysis, Henry said, was that someone had placed a toxic substance in Malcolm X's food. Someone deliberately tried to poison me, Malcolm told Henry. Henry said an attempt was made to find the waiter, but he no longer worked for the Hilton. The episode was reminiscent of the CIA plots to poison Zhou Enlai in the 55 Afro-Asian Conference in Bandung, and plots to poison Fidel Castro and Patrice Lumumba in the 60s. Of course, he does something here that also I think is significant, is explaining the relationship between the plans of Malcolm and Martin, and Bob Meany and Chauncey Eskridge. It says on August 11th, New York Times reporter wrote a story explained brilliantly why the State Department requested that Richard Helms, the CIA Deputy Director for Plans, treat Malcolm X as if he were any foreign agent or enemy of the United States. The story, written by M.S. Handler, one of the few white reporters Malcolm X had come to admire, stated that the State Department felt it would have been a major foreign policy problem on its hands if even one African or Asian nation offered to back Malcolm X's petition at the UN. Says it would be a major foreign policy problem if just one country backed his intentions. Deep, deep, deep. August 28th, 1 week after Malcolm X addressed the OAU, Hoover insisted what amounted to a declaration of war against Malcolm X, Dr. King, and other prominent civil rights activists in a memo he sent to all field officers. The news media in recent months mirrored the civil rights issue as probably the #1 issue in the political spectrum. This is Gay Hoover. There are clear and unmistakable signs that we are in the midst of a social revolution with the racial movement at its core. The Bureau, in meeting its responsibilities in this area, is an integral part of this revolution. Not meaning the revolution was going to overthrow the FBI. And so they were very strong about suggesting that there was great danger. There's a whole series of discussions in here about Malcolm meeting with the various African leaders, being assisted by many of the strong and noble African leaders. December 9th, Secretary of State Dean Russ suggested that a communist-backed conspiracy was at the root of the mounting verbal attacks on America in the UN and the anti-American demonstrations abroad. The State Department was especially concerned about violent acts, which appeared to be connived or acquiesced in by the authorities of the whole state, or in which the authorities are slow in taking action to control mobs or rioters. Just a series of discussions. While King did not spell out the nature of his alliance, the FBI Director Hoover and the CIA, which monitored King's trip, knew that he was referring to a possible alliance with Malcolm X. King's statement in Oslo on December 9th suggested clearly that he and Malcolm had arrived at a tacit agreement for cooperative action. February 22nd. When did Malcolm die?
February 21st, Sunday.
Okay. Let's dig Malcolm a little bit. Malcolm's house firebombed the week before his death. The whites run the story in the public that Malcolm was burning his own house. They find a bottle with a wick in it and gasoline on the dresser in the remaining part of the house that wasn't burned. Betty Shabazz says that she had went in that room to try to find clothes for the children. Neighbors had gone into that room to find clothes for the children, but the FBI went in the room and said that, New York City police went in the room and said that they found that bottle, and that bottle was evidence that Malcolm was burning his own house, and that echoed the comments being made by the Muslims who also said that Malcolm was burning his own house. Now, who, and since that was the police and the fire department, who is headed up, who is the mayor of New York? Okay. Huh?
No,
Don't worry, Bruce. Don't worry about it. Mac Wagner? Wagner. Was Bruce here when we asked that question earlier?
No,
He was, because he got the right answer, Wagner. I asked him earlier who was the mayor of New York when the boss agents and all of that were around Malcolm. And did nobody know? I appreciate that, brother. So you're right. Wagner. Mayor Wagner. Mayor Wagner was the mayor of New York during that period. Funding of Malcolm X. February 15th, Secretary of State Dean Russ ended a 10-day Florida vacation, returned to Washington for a meeting with President Johnson. But Johnson, mounting fears about the progress of Malcolm X's UN petition, wonders if the subject had come up. OAAU rally at the Teresa Hotel. Malcolm X accuses the New York State government of entertaining a conspiracy to kill him. Who is head of the New York State government? Nelson Rockefeller. We feel a conspiracy has been entered into at the local level with some policemen and firemen. The police in this county know what's going on. This conspiracy leads to my death. Malcolm X also stated that he had sent a telegram to Secretary of State Dean Russ charging the government with failing to help him protect his life. Since this information was nothing new to Russ, the FBI, or boss, no probe was initiated. Of course, you got the nigga get your hand out of my pocket move and all of that, leading to the assassination. 2 days, now we're right before assassination, February 16th, James Shabazz. Aide mentions that Malcolm has these 5 names with the names of people who were supposed to kill him. 2 days later, February 18th, Malcolm X is evicted from his home in Elmhurst. The same morning, CIA agent Richard Helms' office issues a memorandum with a reference number CSCI 316-01196-64 with the subject matter, quote, Egyptian funding of Malcolm X. The term SCI referred to clandestine services counterintelligence. According to the memo, Malcolm had confided to an associate, quote, that he is currently being financed by the Egyptian government. This was a gross distortion. What Malcolm had revealed, in fact, was that NASA had given him approximately 20 scholarships of any student selected by him to study Orthodox Islam at the University of Al-Azhar. Since neither Malcolm nor his children could use the scholarships, he could not trade them in for cash. It is difficult to understand why clandestine services would interpret them as constituting financing. Burt Marshall, the last person publicly reported to have the possession of the central piece of evidence in President Kennedy's assassination. Do you know what the central piece of evidence in President Kennedy's assassination was?
The skull.
The skull. Who said that? Correct. Thank you, Brother Sean. Very profound. The skull. Burt Marshall had the skull of John Kennedy. Run around with it in a can. Of course, it was the brain that was manipulated on the direction of the bullets. But Burt Marshall, Civil Rights Division man, is now suggested by the CIA to be the one to go look at Malcolm's finances, which means that Burt Marshall probably wasn't civil rights attorney. He was possibly the CIA from the jump, operating as Civil Rights Division head of the U.S. Justice Department front. There you go, Bro. Says that Burt Marshall, last person publicly reported to have in possession a central piece of evidence in President Kennedy's assassination, the president's brain, asked the CIA to determine who was financing Malcolm X. He had contacted Alex Haley. See, that takes us back to 418. Where Alex Haley says he was contacted by Burt Marshall and asked about Malcolm's finances. And you know, I've read this 1,000 times. I've almost had it memorized. I haven't read it in a couple of years, though. In Washington, D.C. and New York City, at least powerful, this autobiography of Malcolm X in the epilogue, he's now talking about things that made him eerie about Malcolm's death. In Washington, D.C. and New York City, at least powerful civic, private, and governmental agencies and individuals were keenly interested in what Malcolm X was saying abroad. Civic, private, and government. Civic, private, and government. This book will explain what the government is saying. Civic and private denote two different constituencies. Who is the principal constituency of the CIA? CFR. Maybe they weren't the civic or private. Anyway, wouldn't it be something if we broke into the council and found a directive from the council on foreign relations chairman of the board demanding that Malcolm X be killed before the March 3rd conference in Africa? Wouldn't that be something if we found something like that? Would it be something if I told you I had something like that right up here in this box? Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something? I mean, if y'all love Malcolm X, would y'all be willing to do something to the Council on Foreign Relations if I can prove to you that they ordered his death?
Check.
Mild hesitation.
Half-mast fist.
All right. Nobody needs to reveal that publicly. We know all real plans are done privately. Anyway, in Washington, D.C., New York, at least powerful civic, private, and government agencies and individuals were keenly interested in what Malcolm X was saying abroad and were speculating upon what he would say and possibly do when he returned to America. In upstate New York, I received a telephone call from a close friend who said he had been asked to ask me if I would come to New York City on an appointed day to meet with, quote, a very high government official, end of quote, who was interested in Malcolm X. I did fly to the city. My friend accompanied me to the offices of a large private foundation well known for its activities and donations in the civil rights area. And we know that to be the Ford Foundation because we know from the book The American Establishment that 72% of all grants in social welfare areas were given exclusively by the Ford Foundation in the whole decade of the 60s. And anybody know who was the president of the Ford Foundation during that period? Who was chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank as well as chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations all at the same time.
David Rockefeller.
He's in the book The Wise Men.
John McCoy.
John McCoy. Damn, boy, y'all are good. I love y'all. Boy, y'all love y'all. Y'all just never know what it means when you can answer these questions and other people dig into this information and can see that you know it. Believe me, it don't seem like bullshit to you. I mean, we sitting here fucking around talking, getting late at night, and we talking and I'm tired and we do what we gotta do, but you will never know what it means when they understand that you know it. And that you know it in a way that it don't need nothing, but that it's in you. Because soon the appropriate circumstances will develop that will turn you deeper against them. It's inevitable. They're going to force it to happen.
True.
Now, I did a high government official who interested in Malcolm X. I did fly to the city. My friend accompanied me to the offices of a large private foundation, well known for its activities and donations in the civil rights area. I met with the foundation's president, and he introduced me to the Justice Department Civil Rights Section head, Burke Marshall. Marshall was chiefly interested in Malcolm X's finances. But now, Marshall, at one point in the book, it says the CIA said, we're sending Marshall to find out about Malcolm's money. In another part of the book, it quotes Marshall was saying, I'm going to ask the CIA to see if they can find out where Malcolm gets his money from. But the CIA didn't fly to New York at the Ford Foundation for the meeting. Burt Marshall did. And it's just, again, the Judas factor and the sources, the CIA documents as the source for that evidence only gives the power of what we would call analytical reading, that you could read something that doesn't say this is CIA, but you can look at it and say, hey, you know, that's some CIA type of shit. You know, or you pick up Eyes of My Soul, and guy say he was in Cincinnati in '87, and you look up and see Ricky Ross goes to Cincinnati in '87, you gotta know, you got Tyrone Powers, the fake FBI agent, and Ricky Ross in Cincinnati for 3 years together. But that's analytical, that's analytical reading, meaning it's weaving those things together which you have access to and making them work into your story. Burke Marshall was chiefly interested in Malcolm X's finances, particularly how his extensive traveling since Malcolm X ouster had been paid for. I told him, to the best of my knowledge, that the several payments he received for some speeches and possibly donations from his organization, donations that his organization received, and that Malcolm X had told me of borrowing money from his sister Ella for his current trip, and that recently on the Saturday Evening Post he brought the condensed rights to the book for a substantial sum that was soon to be received. Marshall listened in quietly, attentively, and asked a few questions. Marshall listened quietly, attentively, and asked a few questions concerning other aspects of Malcolm X's life and thanked me. I wrote Malcolm X in Cairo that night about the interview. He never mentioned it. Now, Malcolm damn near dead in Cairo getting poisoned. Right. You're going to write him a letter someplace in Cairo where he don't live. Right. And you're going to say, well, you're removing your guilt of being an informant on Malcolm. You wrote him a letter to tell him you were informant on him. You didn't send it to his house where he was likely to read it, or his wife could have read it to him over the phone when he called him home every night. Right. You're going to send it to Cairo. Right. And say he didn't answer. Right. Who's to say he ever got it? Right, exactly. But that was just to remove his guilt of having done it. That just vouches for the level of pressure. That's why the suspicion that whites would have over why someone would give money. I was always telling you about it. Maybe it was going to be O.J. Maybe it was going to be Michael Jackson. It was going to be Tupac. Every week we think we got the one with the big money, and they're either dead, in jail, or something. Weird. Luther Campbell. Luther from down there in Miami, when he was doing grift, back to Public Enemy, when they first was going, all the way down. Every time we got their big money, they took big money away. So when I passed, I had all you big monies who have kept me going. Like Big Money James and Big Money Robert. Who, in actuality, again, this is another thing you would greatly underestimate. The little things that you do to help, you would greatly underestimate, but you would only pick up the weight of it if you understand the weight of the work that we're performing. Oh, by the way, one of the things, I did not go to Chicago this weekend. I had a scheduled speech in Chicago, but I didn't feel good about it. And a couple of people put up some money, so I didn't have to go. That was very important. that we didn't have to go to Chicago. But I'm being besieged by requests to give my analysis on the CIA drug story. And one of the things you notice I have not done, outside of just tipping you on a few things, every week I mention one thing, is not to do the CIA drug story because I don't want to be ventilated. I would much prefer for them to shoot their wad that they're shooting. But I've gotten calls from white press, from black radio all over the country. When they were holding this conference, they were making me the keynote of a conference last Saturday in Chicago. It was the Copley to do the CIA drug story. So I didn't show. So they sent me a call to say we'd like to reschedule. And it says, you are the only thing missing. You are the only thing missing from our understanding of how we should see the CIA drug story. Now I got far more important things than some issue about CIA drug story that they should be listening to, that they don't hear, to want to hear this real bad, which is where the whites are ventilating all the blacks all over about to what extent do they know of this. My option is that I got that they don't got is I got the boys. I got the boys, the Bloods and the Crips. I got the boys in Chicago. The boys who did the stuff. And the boys' story, again, is much deeper. Remember right here I told you all that we announced a tribunal? That's right. Did y'all see what was on the polls around D.C.? Y'all see it? Anybody see what was on the polls? The LaRoches called for a tribunal, open testimony on the drug case. George Bush. Put flyers all over the corners asking for blacks to come in and testify to them about the drug story. And I told right here that somebody was going to do that shit. Of course, there wasn't nobody there and shit. You didn't see or hear nothing about it because they had no real impact. But they tried. They tried. And that was really intriguing. Really intriguing. Yes, Brother Robert.
There's a black promotion dude that be up Maryland. I mean, them got an argument, right? He called me a spectator. So I told him, I can be what you want me to be. But he said he going to have a forum of Maryland on that George Bush.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Steve, I think this is deep too. While everybody's talking about this CIA thing, Secretary of State is over in Africa, dealing with, trying to recolonize African nations. I think that's a real powerful.
In fact, what I needed too was, I brought this here. I need you, Juan. In the day's post, and I know Brother Buddy brought me the article on Secretary of State Christopher is in Burundi, Rwanda. No, he's in Angola now. And he tells Jonas Sanvivi to come on out the bush. We ain't gonna fund this destabilization program that we funded with you for so many years. All them African babies you helped us kill. But the key thing is that at the bottom of the story, is and this was a section I was going to do called New World Order in the News. I just need to show you the bottom of the story. Brother Juan, get your pen out. Bottom of the story says, now this is where I want you to understand how news is changing. The whites now recognize they can't run the whole news to the masses of the people. For 25 cents, you can hear for 25 cents you can hear that the State Department, Christopher, told Sanvivi come out the bush. But only if you got internet. It says to read the European Union's official criteria. Oh, that's the wrong story. Oh, that's the European voter story. But it's got the same thing at the bottom. I'm going to tell you what that says. It's got the same thing at the bottom. It says that's on Dole. I'm looking for Warren Christopher being in, where'd he go here? Christopher reproaches rebel Sanvivi. Absence of Angola, missed opportunity. Right at the bottom it says, for more information. Now, the story is you can hear him tell him come show up. It says, but for more information, for a day-to-day review of Secretary of Christopher's African trip, and an overview of Angolan history from the 15th century to the present, click the above symbol on the front page of the post site on the World Wide Web at http://www.washingtonpost.com or .com. I ain't computer language. But the point of it is,
Did you get it?
That's the post age.
Right, but the point of it is that the Post is telling you that there's a bigger story they can put in the story. But that the masses for a quarter can't get that story. You need 2,000 to ante up to get the, you can get Christopher across Africa. Like, Christopher is destabilizing Africa right now.
Right.
And the French are mad. The French are arguing with the United States saying that this is still our part.
That's right.
Right. In fact, I had a tape that I was going to show to you from the constituency on Africa at the Black Caucus, where the white man Herb Cohen, who was once what?
Undersecretary for African Affairs.
Undersecretary of State for African Affairs, a white man.
Right.
And all these others were speakers under Congressman Payne, and they were talking about the French was giving them the hardest time in obeying the rules in Africa. What family runs France?
Rothschild.
Thank you. So when you say French, you say Rothschild. So Africa's got this problem. Rothschild is part of the problem, but America ain't no other solution. But the fact that you can get a better story. Here's a story on European Union, the pains of European Union. It says, for more, to read the European Union's official criteria for each nation to qualify for membership in the single European currency, click the above symbol on the Post Worldwide website. In other words, they know it's a deeper story that they could give, but they ain't giving the story for a quarter. You got to have 2,000 to get that story. And I'm not saying you got 2,000, but the point of it is that the better story is not in the mass-produced items. And they're now getting people to agree that there can be layers of information. This only costs $7.95. Only $7.95. But soon they'll probably have some shit say, hit .com Foreign Affairs and get the other story. You see, you see I'm late. You see how late I am. And that only vouched for something. One other thing that was in the day's paper, I want to make a great note to you, not to leave or lose Malcolm. But there was a front page story is about Dole and Clinton and how similar their foreign policies are. And Anthony Lake, who is Anthony Lake? What position does he have? National Security Advisor. Right. Anthony Lake makes a statement saying, for the first time in the history of America, the internationalists have won the nomination from both parties. That is a massive confession. Okay. That's a massive confession. That internationalists control both nominees. Internationalists is the word for the Network One, New World Order-ites, who were the internationalists versus the isolationists. Said Anthony Lake, quote, in today's Washington Post, October 15th, 96, quote, the internationalists have won in each party, said Lake. That has almost historic significance because it means that we have headed off what could have been a reverse in the wake of the Cold War to a traditional American foreign policy which was insular more than isolationist. And that's a major confession, saying that Dole and Clinton are together on Soviet bloc countries, NATO, on arms to the Bosnians. Said they do everything alike because they all use the same people who all come out of the same Network One, that all of them are grossly similar. One last thing I want to read to you. I had taped this Malcolm X, the shooting of Malcolm X in the movie, Malcolm X movie by Spike Lee. I wanted to show you that, but I left the TV in the VCR. My brother's got a camera. I'm going to try to use it for something I want to show you at the end with Brother Larry. I'm going to have to get to that. Unfortunately, I tried to do it at the beginning. That's why I was telling him that I was hoping you would be here. And I also got Brother Donald that I wanted to have. Last week we talked about the Boule, Roscoe Bruce, and these 20,000 parents who were available to demonstrate against the Boule for their domination of the public school system. And Brother Donald left last week and went and researched something about Roscoe Bruce, who was the man who was being attacked as being the person alleged in a conspiracy to control DC public school system on behalf of the Boule, who were running out of Howard University, running the Boule. And we read military intelligence. We read military intelligence report stating how they were trying to translate what the Boule meant and stuff. Okay, well, what's the time? 10 o'clock, okay. Anyway, so one thing I wanted to read to you was the dilemma that Carl Rowan denoted in trying to. This is the Boule role. Malcolm X is murdered. All African countries are writing stories about America killed Malcolm X. Malcolm X was an international hero and all of that. So Carl Rowan takes it upon himself as head of the State Department's U.S. Information Agency to send this communication around the world that Malcolm really wasn't about much or nothing. Don't you all start stirring up trouble, because Malcolm really wasn't shit. I don't know what she's trying to say. She's pointing about going that way. And I don't know who she is or what she's trying to do. And all the things that were going on. It said that there were scattered acts of violence in reaction to the assassination, and different comments being made in London, in Cuba, Algeria, Indonesia, Pakistan, China, Soviet Union, all over the world. Comments about Malcolm were being made in terms of saying the importance of Malcolm X, and Malcolm was being killed by America. Now, while the black Muslims in Chicago were celebrating the assassination, this was during Savior's Day right after Malcolm's death, police made a second arrest in Harlem, a man believed to be one of the 5 murdered Malcolm X. Norman 3X Butler was arrested at his home February 26. Police said Butler had taken and passed the examination to become a New York police officer 2 years later, but according to police, he wasn't hired because his character check made him unacceptable. There was no mention of Butler in the arrest in any of the speeches at the convention. During an impromptu press conference afterwards, John Ali, once again wearing the hat of official press spokesman, was asked, was it true that Butler was a special enforcer for the Fruit of Islam? He says, quote, I never heard of him, John Ali says, but he promised to investigate. Of course, it was known that Butler was one of the henchmen out of the Newark mosque who had done much killing. The police may have lacked authority, as John Ali indicated, but other black Muslims knew the truth about Butler's status in the Nation of Islam and contradicted John Ali's statement about the accused assassins' prominence in the Fruit of Islam. And of course, that was the same thing they did with Bess. Try to say Bess wasn't anything, didn't know of him. Come to find out, he had been a killer. The only other quarter where Malcolm X's assassination was not considered a tragedy were the mouthpieces of the federal government and the media, and of course Carl T. Rowan, director of the U.S. Information Agency, expressed disbelief over the way foreign countries were beaming the assassination. Quote, when I first heard of Malcolm X's death, Rowan told a gathering of American Foreign Service Association in Washington, quote, I knew there was a real danger of it being grossly misconstructed in countries where there was a lack of information about what actually had taken place, what Malcolm was and what he stood for, or what he was being espoused by those Negroes to whom Malcolm was in conflict. Thus, I asked my colleagues in the U.S. Information Agency to do an extra zealous job of getting out the facts, of informing the world in order that we might minimize damaging reactions based on